Most people shopping for a mini PC are gonna recognize names like B-Link, Forum, GMKTec. Kamrui doesn't have that kind of brand recognition, which means this system really lives and dies on its hardware choices alone. What stands out here is that this mini PC doesn't try to be a little bit of everything. The Kamrui Hyper H2 is almost entirely focused on CPU performance, thermals, and noise, with very little attention paid to anything beyond that. It's a deliberately narrow approach, and what makes it interesting, whether that focus turns out into a smart, purpose-built machine or a tough sell in 2026, comes down to how you plan to use it. So in this video, I'm gonna walk you through what Kamrui got right, where they clearly made trade-offs, and who this mini PC actually makes sense for.
It's the money.
Right out of the box, the Hyper H2 comes in a pretty standard mini PC package. You get the unit itself, VESA mounting screws, 120 watt inline power adapter, and a basic HDMI cable. Physically, the Kamrui Hyper H2 is a compact, understated mini PC built around an all plastic chassis. It doesn't have the premium feel you get from aluminum systems from some of the more established brands, but it also doesn't feel flimsy or poorly assembled. Up front, there's a power button, a headset jack, two 10 gigabit USB-A ports, and a USB-C port that supports 10 gigabit data transfer, DisplayPort alt mode, and power delivery. Around the back, you'll find four 5 gigabit USB-A ports, HDMI 2.0, DisplayPort 1.4, and a single 1 gigabit Ethernet port. Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5.2 are provided by a Realtek 8852BE adapter. The connectivity covers the basics, but what's missing stands out immediately. There's no Thunderbolt, no USB 4, no 2.5 gig Ethernet, and no real expansion path beyond what's already on the chassis. This is not a system that's trying to be flexible or future-proof on the I/O side. The unit I'm covering is configured with Intel's Core i5-14450HX, 32 gigabytes of DDR4 3200 memory, and a 1 terabyte NVMe SSD. Kamrui supports dual channel memory up to 64 gigabytes and includes two M.2 slots for storage, so there is at least some room to grow. Even so, the platform choices here say a lot about what this system is trying to be, and just as importantly, what it's not. While the 14th gen Intel CPU does support DDR5, my assumption is Kamrui went with DDR4 as a cost-saving measure due to the recent spike in RAM prices. The Core i5-14450HX is a 14th generation Intel mobile processor with 10 cores and 16 threads made up of 6 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores. It has a base frequency of 2.8 gigahertz, boosts up to 4.8 gigahertz, and includes 20 megabytes of Intel Smart Cache. This is an HX class chip, which means it's designed to run at higher sustained power levels than the U or H series CPUs you usually see in mini PCs. Power delivery is often where mini PCs fail first when corners are cut. Fortunately, the Hyper H2 uses a multi-phase power delivery design, which is exactly what you want to see with modern Intel mobile CPUs. Instead of relying on a single large power circuit, the load is spread across multiple phases, improving stability and efficiency under sustained load. The power components themselves aren't enthusiast grade, but they're also not sketchy or bargain bin parts. These are common, well understood components you'll find in Chinese laptops and mid-range mini PCs, chosen to be reliable without driving up costs unnecessarily. What really matters is that the design matches the intended operation envelope. Cooling is handled by a dual copper heatsink with dual heat pipes and a blower style fan. It's a proper cooling solution for this CPU in this class, and in testing it does exactly what it's supposed to do. The internal layout is clean, the airflow path makes sense, and nothing about design suggests Kamrui is cutting dangerous corners. This isn't an overbuilt workstation class motherboard, but it's also not under-designed. The internal layout and component choices line up well with the performance targets Kamrui is aiming for, and from a hardware perspective, it looks like a system that should hold up well over years of normal use. Now, on first boot, the Windows 11 setup was straightforward and uneventful, which is exactly what you want to see in these mini PCs. Kamrui allows you to bypass the internet connection requirement, so you can set up a local account without being forced into a Microsoft login. Once setup was complete, I updated Windows and the latest Intel graphics drivers. Aside from the usual Windows 11 bloat, there was no additional Kamrui installed bloatware, adware, or questionable pre-installed software. That kind of clean out of the box experience isn't something you always get from lesser known mini PC brands, so it's worth calling out as a genuine positive. Now, before running any benchmarks, I spent some time in the UFI because power limits play a huge role in how mobile CPUs behave in small form factor systems. Out of the box, PL1 is set to 55 watts and PL2 is set to 65 watts. For a compact mini PC with this cooling solution, that's a very sensible configuration. The Core i5-14450HX can technically draw far more power in other environments, up to around 150 watts in some laptop designs, but Kamrui has clearly tuned this system for sustained, repeatable performance rather than chasing short-lived peak benchmark numbers. I left these settings at stock and set Windows to best performance for all testing. Now, before getting deeper into performance, I want to address something that many people are probably already thinking about. I've largely avoided reviewing 13th and 14th generation Intel systems, and that's because of the very real voltage and degradation issues that surfaced with certain desktop CPUs. Those problems were tied to excessive voltage behavior under sustained high loads, and they understandably hurt buyer confidence. What matters here is that this system uses a mobile HX class processor, not a desktop chip. The Core i5-14450HX operates at much lower voltages, has strict firmware enforced power limits, and is designed to run well below the conditions that cause those desktop failures. Based on Intel's disclosures and current field data, these mobile processors are not showing the same degradation behavior. Now, that doesn't make the original concern invalid, and it doesn't mean long-term monitoring isn't important, but at this point, as far as I know, there are no indications that this CPU is affected in the same way. One thing I can say with confidence is that this has been the most stable mini PC I've ever tested. I typically run each benchmark at least 3 times more if the results vary, and then average the runs. Now, while testing the Hyper H2, I noticed that the standard deviation across benchmark runs was the lowest I've ever recorded. In several cases, the results were identical from run to run, which is actually uncommon in benchmarking. So getting into benchmarking, the Hyper H2 behaves exactly as its design choice suggests it would. On the CPU side, Cinebench 2024 delivers a single core score of around 107 and a multi-core score of near 669. In Geekbench 6, single core is about 2,488 and multi-core lands around 10,675. Now, these are solid, predictable results for a 55 to 65 watt mobile class chip. For everyday CPU bound tasks like code compilation, data processing, heavy multitasking, or large spreadsheets, the Hyper H2 feels responsive and very capable. It doesn't lag, and nothing about the CPU itself feels like a bottleneck. Compared to similarly priced systems, the CPU performance is competitive. The Bosgame P3 Plus, for example, uses a Ryzen 7 7840HS and edges ahead in sustained multi-core workloads, but the Hyper H2 isn't dramatically behind in the areas that matter for general productivity. Where things shift is in graphics and GPU accelerated workloads. The integrated graphics here are Intel UHD graphics with just 16 execution units. That's not only weak compared to AMD's RDNA based integrated GPUs, it's limited even compared to other Intel iGPUs. In Geekbench GPU testing, the Hyper H2 scores around 4,000, the lowest GPU score of any mini PC I've tested. To put that in perspective, the GMKTec M6 Ultra, often priced in the same ballpark, scores over 23,000, the same GPU test. The Bosgame P3 Plus, it's even higher, north of 30,000. Now, that's not a small gap, it's a performance class gap. This limitation isn't just about gaming. GPU performance affects video playback, acceleration, UI smoothness at high resolutions, creative workloads, and even parts of productivity software that lean on acceleration. Looking at GPU accelerated benchmarks like Geekbench and Night Raid reinforces just how constrained this configuration really is. The Hyper H2 simply doesn't have the execution resources or memory bandwidth to keep up once workloads start to lean on graphics performance. Where this system does make sense is in real-world productivity tasks. In Procyon Office, the Microsoft productivity test, the Hyper H2 lands near the top of the chart. That strong single-core performance pays off here, and the result is competitive with both the Bosgame P3 Plus and the GMKTec M6 Ultra. For spreadsheets, presentations, and everyday office work, the responsiveness is right where you want it. Now, once you move into creative workloads, though, the limitations again become more obvious. In Photoshop, CPU-heavy operations perform well thanks to the Hyper H2's strong per-core performance, but effects and filters that rely on GPU acceleration feel noticeably slower compared to competing systems. Here, both the M6 Ultra and P3 Plus pull ahead thanks to stronger integrated GPUs and better memory bandwidth. In Premiere Pro, where balanced CPU and GPU performance really matters, the Hyper H2 struggles more noticeably. Timeline scrubbing feels less smooth, effects processing takes longer, and exports run slower compared to systems like the Bosgame P3 Plus, which leverages stronger GPU hardware. The GMKTec M6 Ultra also outpaces the H2 in these creative workloads thanks to a similar advantage in GPU throughput. This is a system that excels when workloads stay CPU focused and light on graphics demands, but it falls behind quickly as soon as GPU acceleration enters the equation. So, of course, gaming performance follows the same pattern as the GPU benchmarks, and it's just as constrained. Now, very light 2D titles like RimWorld are technically playable, but that's about where things stop making sense. Anything more demanding than that drops into unplayable territory very quickly. I tried to run my usual gaming benchmark suite, and even at 1080p on low settings, Baldur's Gate 3 was stuck in the single-digit FPS range. The Borderlands 3 benchmark wouldn't even launch. For context, there's the other systems on the chart can at least produce usable results in those same titles. The GMKTec M6 Ultra and Bosgame P3 Plus both manage playable frame rates at reduced settings, which lines up with their much stronger integrated GPUs. The Hyper H2 simply doesn't have the graphics resources to compete there at all, and I say this often, but it's especially clear here. This is not a gaming mini PC. Even casual gaming expectations need to be kept very low because the integrated graphics are really only suited for basic display output and extremely light workloads. Now, before wrapping up performance, it's worth putting the results into pricing context because that's where the Hyper H2 struggles the most. At around $500, the Hyper H2 ends up with one of the weakest price to performance ratios on this chart. When you look at the cost per point compared to other mini PCs in the same range, it simply doesn't compete well. Other systems deliver far more balanced performance for the money, especially once GPU accelerated workloads are part of the equation. Even stepping down to lower price systems, you can see better overall value. There are mini PCs that cost less and still manage stronger graphics performance, faster memory, or better platform features, which makes the Hyper H2's position feel awkward. You're paying a premium here for CPU stability, thermals, and acoustics, not for raw performance or versatility. In isolation, the Hyper H2 CPU numbers are respectable, but once price is factored in and once you compare what competing systems deliver at similar or lower cost, the value proposition becomes much harder to justify unless your workload is very specifically CPU focused. One area where Kamrui does deserve credit is thermals and acoustics. Under a sustained Cinebench multi-core load, the CPU peaked at around 83 degrees Celsius and then settled into the mid-70s with no signs of thermal throttling. CPU package power briefly hit the 65 watts before dropping back and holding a steady 55 watt sustained draw, which lines up exactly with the configured PL1 and PL2 limits. Total system power from the wall peaked at around 93 watts. That's comfortably below the 120 watt rating of the included power adapter, so there's no sense that the system is operating anywhere near the edge electrically. Fan noise at best performance settings topped out at roughly 52 decibels. It's clearly audible under load, but it isn't sharp, whiny, or distracting, and it's quieter than many small systems running similar workloads. In normal use, the fan behavior feels controlled and predictable rather than reactive. This is a mini PC you can comfortably keep on a desk without it becoming annoying even during sustained CPU heavy tasks. Now, circling back to connectivity, the limitations become harder to ignore once you look at the full picture. The Hyper H2 does give you enough ports to function. It does support up to 3 4K displays, which is useful, but the lack of USB 4 or Thunderbolt, the single 1GBE port, and the use of a Realtek Wi-Fi adapter that isn't Linux friendly all reduce the platform's flexibility. When you combine that with DDR4 memory and a very weak integrated graphics, the system feels dated faster than it should at this price point. At just over $500, the Hyper H2 lands in an extremely competitive segment. There are mini PCs at similar prices that offer stronger integrated graphics, faster memory, better connectivity, and a more balanced overall experience. That content matters a lot. Systems like the GMKTec M6 Ultra and the Bosgame P3 Plus make those trade-offs especially clear. Both deliver significantly better GPU performance, more modern platform features, and broader flexibility while still offering strong CPU performance. The Hyper H2 isn't a bad system. It's stable, it runs cool, it's quiet, and delivers solid CPU performance, but it's also very narrowly focused, and that focus comes with real compromises. So here's the honest conclusion. If you need a quiet, CPU-focused Windows Mini PC for sustained processor heavy workloads, and you genuinely do not care about graphics performance, modern I/O, Linux compatibility, or overall platform flexibility, the Kamrui Hyper H2 can do that job. Outside of that specific use case, it's a hard sell in 2026. A strong CPU alone isn't enough anymore. GPU capability, memory bandwidth, and connectivity all matter, and in those areas, this system falls behind its competition. That makes it difficult to recommend as a general purpose mini PC for most people. This is a niche machine for a niche workload, and that's perfectly fine as long as buyers understand exactly what they're getting. If you want better balanced options in this price range, I've covered several solid alternatives on the channel, including the GMKTec M6 Ultra and Bosgame P3 Plus, and I'll link those reviews here. If this breakdown was helpful, a thumbs up always helps the channel, and if you want more honest data-driven mini PC reviews that look beyond the big brand names, make sure you're subscribed. Thanks for watching.